covert narcissism.
Yes.
Is that version particularly dangerous?
Very. You won't know the gun is in your back until it's too late.
Dr. Mark Rackley is back.
The #1 ADHD psychologist.
Sharing the secrets to spotting a narcissist in your work or relationships.
If you say have a narcissist in your workplace and then say a narcissist in your relationship, in the workplace they will need people to help them to succeed. It's a transactional relationship. There has to be some benefit in it for them. They'll be super nice to you if it means they're going to get promoted. In a personal relationship, that could be where they love bomb you, they give you all this attention, but actually their motive is selfish.
Narcissistic rage could quite easily be confused for RSD, manifesting itself as aggression.
Yeah.
Love bombing could easily be mistaken for the hyperfocus of an ADHDer. How can I be sure that my traits are ADHD and not narcissism?
Let's break that down. So,
do you think I'm a narcissist?
So, a couple of things to consider.
This episode is dedicated to anyone who has 3 different types of work days. You either get absolutely nothing done, get 4 hours of work done at a random time of the day, or you get 40 hours of work done in 4 hours. Just a gentle reminder that tapping the subscribe button helps us here at ADHD Chatter much more than you might realise. As our audience grows, it helps increase our chances of booking even more brilliant guests, full of amazing stories and helpful information. We're so proudly building a community here, and each and every one of our subscribers are valued members of our exclusive ADHD club. The more our community grows, the less we feel alone. So please subscribe. It will help us remind you that you're not broken, that you are and always were enough. Dr. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
We did a fantastic episode last time you were here, talking about ADHD in general senses and broadly. But before we started recording that episode, we were discussing narcissism off camera. And it made me think that I had to invite you back to explore that topic a bit further. So a broad question and not yet ADHD specific, but what is a narcissist? And is there a difference between a narcissist and someone with NPD? Yeah,
absolutely. So narcissism, if you think that's a kind of a catch-all word, really, it's explaining a set of behavior or personality traits that a person might display. So what you can have is narcissistic personality traits. So they can be things like a feeling of superiority to other people. It can be a sense of that I'm special, or that I have gifts that other people don't have. So they're kind of more kind of narcissistic personality traits. NPD is narcissistic personality disorder. So that's different. That's a mental health disorder. And in order to be diagnosed with that, there's 9 symptoms. We use what's called the DSM-5 now, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual. And there's 9 different symptoms in there, Alex, that you need to meet 5 of to have a diagnosis of NPD. So they are different. Like you can have somebody who's has narcissistic personality traits, but they wouldn't necessarily meet the criteria for NPD. And also, they might be a bit of a challenging character, but somebody with NPD would be quite a difficult person to be around, and in fact, could also be quite dangerous as well.
Why would they be a difficult person to be around?
So, I'd like to tell the story of... do you know the story of where narcissism came from? Which is just the Greek myth of Narcissus.
No, I don't.
So this is where the kind of the story came from. So Greek mythology, it's all kind of a bit odd. Right? So you have this chap called Narcissus. And Narcissus... catches a glimpse of his reflection in a body of water, and he falls in love with himself. And all his affection goes inward, it's towards himself. And there's this nymph called Echo, and he rejects her advances because he only had desire for himself. And so he never got into a relationship. The relationship was only with himself. His desire was only for himself. And the Greek myth was that he stayed that way for the rest of his life and eventually turned into a flower. And there is a flower, an actual flower, called the Narcissus flower. It's this yellow flower. So that piece is kind of quite real. So that's where the idea of narcissism comes from. It's that idea of being the object of your own affection. And because you're so enamored with yourself, you stay in a relationship with yourself, which means then that having a relationship with other people becomes really difficult, because you're not investing in the relationship with other people. You're so invested in the relationship with yourself. And then Freud took that a step further, Sigmund Freud, and he started to talk about narcissism in terms of ego. That's why we have the words now, that person has a big ego, or that person is egocentric. So when he developed the idea of the ego, that started to explain what we'd see as kind of narcissism, the way we understand it today. So it starts up with the Greek myth. Freud kind of took it and shook it up a little bit in psychological terms. And then we've taken it now and we have it as a clinical term to describe a personality disorder. So somebody who says NPD, their personality is the problem. And the narcissism within their personality is causing their mental health to be very, very problematic. But also that person would not have mental stability. They would be an unstable person, which is why they can be dangerous.
I bet there's a lot of people.
Big answer.
No, it's fantastic. And I wonder how many people listening are probably thinking about someone that they know, hearing that description. Why do you think narcissism is such a big topic in the world right now?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and we're talking about I think culture has a big part to do with it. Like it's a word that's thrown around an awful lot, and also I think in certainly, well, just the way I see it is there's a huge amount in social media, but also on television, where that person is described as a narcissist or they're labeled as a narcissist. So in popular culture, we're seeing a lot of this kind of personality being portrayed, and I think it's that crossover where now those mediums are still very powerful, and people, although it might be fictitious, start to look at that and think, well, I know somebody like that. Or that looks like somebody I was in a relationship with, or that's my boss or whoever. So now it becomes colloquial, and we're now thinking, well, without any kind of assessment, I think that person's a narcissist, or I think that person's a narcissist. And then that kind of narrative, I feel, has become so pervasive now that it's almost like people are sensitive to, when they tune into something that feels like, oh, that's narcissism, then that person gets labeled as a narcissist, which isn't always accurate, but also it's not necessarily a fair depiction of that person. Yeah.
It's quite similar then to ADHD in a sense, in terms of someone gets an ADHD.
I'm a little bit ADHD, I'm a little bit autistic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And people labeling their friends or family members.
Yeah.
So how common is genuine narcissism?
It's so rare. Like, according to the stats, and I'm laughing as I'm saying this, according to what we know, between 0.5 and 1% of the population would have an NPD. Like, that's tiny, really tiny. Now, why I think it's so low is because people with proper narcissism won't go and see a doctor, they won't go to therapy, they won't go to see mental health professionals. And the reason they won't do that is because that would be perceived as weakness. And somebody who has like proper narcissism, they have a very fragile ego. So they have a very fragile sense of themselves, which they need to defend against. So they will do everything they can to not be exposed. So it's massively linked to chronic insecurities. So that needs to be defended against at all costs. So what you get is an over-exaggerated sense of self, that this person can't apologize, they're never wrong. They're the person that always comes up with the best ideas. So they're never going to admit, I have a mental health problem here. So, which is why they don't they don't go to therapy. because for that exact reason. So meeting a true narcissist or somebody with NPD is quite rare because there's no way you'll get them into a doctor's office.
Do you think the actual cases of narcissism, genuine narcissism, is higher than what's reported?
Could be absolutely so much higher for that reason, yeah, because they won't be in my office, yeah.
So what does a narcissist need to survive?
So you think, coming back to what we said about Freud a few minutes ago, so Freud came up with this concept of ego, and ego is the Latin word for I, as in the letter I. So that's that sense of kind of who you are and your sense of self and your relationship with yourself. And Freud saw the function of the ego was to reality test the stuff that's coming from the unconscious. So think about your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind, you've no control over that. That does its own thing. So what Freud said the function of the ego was to reality test the stuff coming from the unconscious, so that therefore then that stuff could be managed and censored and not harm the person. So if somebody has a fragile ego, then what they're doing is they're compensating for things that they feel they lack, but also they feel that they want to present to who they are in a certain way to the world. So it's not reality, because nobody has all the gifts. Nobody wins all the prizes. Nobody's the best at everything. That's not real. But when you have somebody who has a fragile ego, they can't tolerate failure. They can't tolerate that they're not as good as somebody else, or somebody might be better than them. They suffer with chronic insecurity, chronic envy. So you get this over-exaggerated persona of, I have this enormous ego, but it's to compensate for the fact that they don't have that. So it's a massive contradiction, which is why if they feel their ego is threatened in any way, they go on the attack. And that can be really nasty.
And what is it that they're looking for in life, and more specifically, people around them?
They're looking for validation. So for somebody who is a proper narcissist, that validation comes from two sources. You've got internal and external validation. So internal validation is that voice in your head that says, well done, you did great there, that was great. You know, that sense of like, we can tolerate failure and we can appreciate our successes. So if we get external validation, that's a bonus. But we don't need it. Because again, if we have a healthy ego and we have a healthy sense of who we are, then that internal voice is enough to keep us in a place where we feel good about ourselves. If you don't have that, then you're going to need external validation all the time, which means you're going to need people to praise you and tell you how good you are. And you will only be able to tolerate success because failure will feel crushing. So somebody who is narcissistic, they don't build up resilience, because we learn resilience through challenge. We learn how to, what failure feels like, and we learn how to pick the pieces up and move on. Whereas somebody who's narcissistic, they have a huge skills deficit in that. They're not resilient people. They're which is why we use that expression, that person has a fragile ego, because they're so vulnerable. They're such fragile people, and they're so sensitive that if you look at them wrongly a certain way, or there's a word that or sentence that you said, they're immediately defensive. And that tells you that, you know, there's just such a low tolerance for any sign that I'm being attacked, I'm not good enough, or that I'm being exposed. So they're always on the defense. And so what they need is those people around them to constantly cheerlead them, tell them how amazing they are. And so what you sometimes see with narcissists, they surround themselves by basically sycophants. They're the people that constantly go, yes, you're amazing. Yes, you're fantastic. Yes, you're this, you're this. They will not surround themselves with people that call them out and go, but you're not. Yeah.
How does a narcissist prey on someone? And what sort of people are they looking to exploit?
So I think it all depends on the context with that one, Alex. So I'm going to use two examples. So if you say have a narcissist in your workplace, and then say a narcissist in your relationship, In the workplace, what they will prey on is they will need people to help them to succeed. So when it comes to the type of relationships that a narcissist is going to offer you, it's a transactional relationship. It's not an unconditional relationship. There has to be some benefit in it for them. So in the work context, the transactional relationship will be, they'll be super nice to you if it means they're going to get promoted. They'll be very, very accommodating if it means that there's something in it for them. Now, in personal relationships, again, there needs to be something in it for them. So in a personal relationship, that could be where they love bomb you, they give you all this attention, but actually their motive is selfish. So what they're looking for maybe is they're looking for a place to live, or they're looking to get access to your finances, or they like that if you're very beautiful, then being with you makes them look good. But then you can't age. You have to stay that way. So there's always an agenda. But the thing is, with a narcissist, they're not going to tell you the agenda. You're not going to get honest and go, oh, by the way, this is what's really going on here, and this is what I'm looking for. You're never going to get that. So what you'll get is sometimes it will appear to be very nice, and the person will go, oh God, they're really nice. But it's a ploy. They have to get you on board in order for their agenda to be fulfilled. So they've got to pull you in. And of course, they're not going to pull you in if they expose what's really going on. So what you get is a performance. And sometimes the performances are Oscar worthy.
And covert narcissism, is that different to the mainstream form of narcissism that we hear about? And
yes.
Is that version particularly dangerous?
Very. So I often call... overt are the ones that are the praise me, love me, I'm amazing. They're the ones that it's very obvious. You'll see what's going on. The covert ones, we often call that one as well vulnerable narcissism. So I often call them, they're the smiling assassins. They're the ones that you won't know the gun is in your back until it's too late. So with those ones, and it's interesting with the covert or vulnerable narcissism, we sometimes call it, is they can be the ones with the classic victim mentality. So the sob story, how awful their life was. They can be the ones that appear to be really vulnerable, but they're using their victimhood or their vulnerability to get attention. And they're using that to manipulate you to get you on board. So it can seem sometimes like if they have been victims of something awful, then if you were to reject somebody like that, then that wouldn't reflect well on you. Because like, well, that's not quite nice. Why are you being so awful to that person? But they will be using that to manipulate you, to get you into a place where they can then start to turn the screw and start to control then, and then the agenda comes out. But on the surface, you won't see it because it's not going to be as obvious as the one who's more overt. So, smiling assassins.
Are narcissists afraid of being alone? And in general terms, do you think a narcissist, what do you think they think of when they are left alone?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. Sometimes when we're alone with our own thoughts, that's when we go into a reflective space and we kind of think about things and we're kind of working things through. Remember, with a narcissist, the narcissist needs to survive. So it's all about survival. It's all about surviving and keeping the narcissistic front in play. So when they're on their own, I would imagine that it's plotting. It's scheming, it's plotting, it's figuring out how to stay one step ahead. So they're not in a reflective place in terms of, oh, I shouldn't have said that to that person there. I probably made them feel bad, or I hurt that person's feelings, that's not going on. Because people with proper narcissism, they lack empathy. And empathy, of course, is being able to see the world through another person's eyes. So they can do and say terrible things, but when they're alone with their thoughts, they're not thinking around, they're not feeling bad about what they've done. It's about survival. So how do I continue to manipulate? But also, interestingly enough, because they you would think that they would love their own company, but they don't, because they're not going to manipulate themselves, because they're not going to get no benefit from that. So they need to be around people, because the validation comes from the external source, not the internal source.
If you're dating a narcissist, what might the general timeline be between that turning into a serious relationship? How might narcissism show itself gradually as a romantic relationship progresses?
Yeah. So, yeah, it might be, I think it'd be very fast, actually, because the thing with, remember, the narcissist has an agenda. So their agenda is the thing that will drive the speed of the relationship. So that word love bombing. So bombing you with love, bombing you, you're the best, you're the most amazing. So really making you feel special, or that you're the one who gets them. So they're positioning you as somebody very, very unique in their life. So it can move very quickly because they want to get you on board, and the intensity is to actually lock the relationship down quite fast. So it can move very, very fast. But once then the narcissist has you on board, then the control happens. So instead of it being an independent relationship, so an independent relationship is where you do your thing, I do my thing, and we respect each other. There's boundaries, there's good communication. It becomes a codependent relationship, which is, I need you, you can't leave me. I feel sad if you're not there. I don't feel safe if you're out with other people. So it's really manipulative. And it puts the other partner in the position of, well, I have to sacrifice myself, or I need to always prioritize the other person over myself. But that's exactly what the narcissist wants. They want you to do that, because then you're relinquishing your control, but also they're getting that validation. They're getting that thing that they don't have themselves from you.
And what tricks does a narcissist use to keep you on their hook if they see you as part of their narcissistic supply?
They can use loads of things. So they can use gaslighting, stonewalling. They can make you believe you're going mad, and that you have, it can be really nasty, that one, actually. Because if you have any kind of mental health, say ADHD, they could use your ADHD as a weapon against you. So it would be, well, but of course, Alex, you do that because you've got ADHD. So they make you kind of doubt yourself, but also they use that as a means of you now being somehow compromised mentally, that, well, you're not quite in touch with reality there because you've got ADHD. So again, it's to isolate you, to make you be the problem, to deflect from the fact that they're the actual problem. They can also do things like they can isolate you from your family and friends. So if family and friends are say going, like, what's with that guy or girl, then they can make that out to be, well, they're just jealous. So there'll always be an excuse as to why the behavior of the narcissist isn't bad, because that can never be exposed. So there'll be deflection, there'll be distraction, there'll be outright lies. So the other person then is left, who isn't narcissistic, they're left doubting themselves. So you start to question then your own sense of, well, am I getting it wrong? And then if the narcissist can see a way in to manipulate that, then they absolutely will. Yeah.
I'm fascinated to ask you how someone can actually spot a narcissist before it gets to that stage. But first, I want to ask you about your ADHD item. I ask all my guests to bring in an item that most represents ADHD for them.
I switched my head there. I was full of narcissism.
We got the new spotlight. Do you like it?
I do like it, yeah.
I'm going to do the reveal. Your ADHD item is, it's an egg. I'll ask you this. And
thank you, yeah. I'm afraid I was going to hop on the floor there. Yes, an egg.
Why does an egg represent ADHD?
Right. So the reason I chose an egg is because if you look at an egg, they're apart from various kind of colors and sizes, they're all fairly the same. So they kind of look like there's kind of, nothing to see here pretty much. But as a food item, it's probably one of the most versatile items that there is out there. Because this can change. This thing is so creative in terms of what it can do and what it can achieve. But if you just take it at face value, then it's just an egg. But if I pop that into a pot of boiling water, it becomes a hard-boiled egg. So it changes its features and it is able to be something completely different. If I dump it into some milk and make scrambled eggs, it changes it again. If I want to make bread with it, it changes it again. If I want to make it into an omelette, it changes it again. So it's incredibly creative and incredibly versatile, and it can do lots of things. But it might not be so obvious. And the reason I chose that is because that's how I see ADHD with my patients. It can be, well, this is ADHD, but actually within the whole sphere of ADHD, there's incredible creativity. But you have to crack the egg or do something with it to release that creativity. And with my patients, I want them to appreciate that creativity and see that creativity is inside them. They can do loads of things. They can be loads of things. They don't just have to be an egg, metaphorically. That there's loads of different ways they can adapt to the world. They can do things. They can be all kinds of unbelievable creative people in the world. And it's all down to managing and working with your ADHD to make those changes. That's why I chose the egg.
What an amazing analogy. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't judge ADHD by its diagnosis. Yeah.
Fantastic. Really, really nice. I'll put that somewhere safe on the shelves.
On my head.
Maybe low down on the shelves.
Just put it beside the slinky.
Yeah,
maybe.
perfect. My item is a washing machine, my ADHD item,
Yes.
because I always forget my clothes in the machine. It's my biggest woe. So I thought I'd call our agony aunt section the washing machine of woes. And I ask my Instagram community to send me in their biggest woes. So it goes in the washing machine. And every week I choose one and read it to my guest to see if we can get some wisdom for the community. This week in the washing machine of woes, somebody has asked, I've been seeing a guy on and off for 1 year now. He keeps messing up. I won't go into detail, but my friends keep begging me to call it off. But I really think he will change. They all think he's a classic narcissist, but I know he'll lash out if I want to leave. What can I do to leave him and stay safe?
Okay. Right. I think we need to be very careful with this one because this does sound like it could be quite precarious in terms of the type of relationship that's going on here. First of all, let's reality check this. This guy will only change because he wants to change. If he has got narcissistic traits and the relationship is serving his benefit and his agenda is being served in the relationship, he's not going to change. That's not going to happen. Because if he was going to change, then he loses the benefit he's getting from the relationship. So that won't happen. But what a narcissist can do, and I think it's happening with this girl, sadly, is they can tell you they will change. But that's not any kind of truthful statement. It's to keep you invested in the relationship. So it's a false promise. It's, I will change. Okay, well then I'll stay. But actually, that isn't a declaration of what's coming. It's actually a ploy to keep you in the relationship. And also, if the family and friends are worried, then they're worried for a reason. But again, what we spoke about a little bit earlier, what can happen with a narcissist is they will convince you that the family have the agenda. So they'll completely flip it, which is, well, I don't have the agenda. I'm just, I'm the victim here. Your family are awful people or they're being whatever, just difficult. So they'll flip it. That's classic gaslighting, which is, well, I'm not the problem, they are. So they'll get you to doubt yourself. So if this guy is doing that, then you have to think, well, look, what's my family's agenda in calling out this bad behavior? But also, if they are genuinely concerned for me, then why am I not listening to that and listening to somebody else who's trying to convince me otherwise? I think what's probably the most telling of what this person has written in is the fact that they would lash out if they were to possibly leave the relationship. If you're in a healthy relationship and there's feelings involved, of course people can be hurt and very sad and not want the relationship to end. That's a completely natural response. But if you're afraid to leave because of the reaction of somebody else, that's telling you something. That's telling you that this person is not letting you end the relationship. And that's control.
What might a classic narcissistic response be to being dumped?
Oh, depending on the narcissist, that can get really nasty. So the problem with narcissism, again, because they can't have any kind of rejection or any kind of situation happen where they're seen as weak. They're the people that they go for vengeance, and the ones that hold the grudges, and they will need you to look worse than them. They need to come out looking good. So with a narcissist, that can get very nasty in terms of it can get trolling, threats of manipulation, threats of violence. It can also be threats of I will go onto social media and expose you in all kinds of awful ways. So they can get very, very nasty indeed. And the whole agenda there is you can't leave me. And so they're keeping you in the relationship, not because they love you. This isn't love. That's not how healthy love behaves, how an independent relationship behaves. They don't want you to leave them because of how it's going to make them look. They can't be dumped.
In the most extreme cases, can those threats of violence turn into real violence?
Oh God, yeah.
And is that narcissism, or is that something else at play?
That can be the narcissistic personality trait coming in there, which is the threats of violence can be because that's narcissistic rage. So remember, somebody who has proper narcissism, they're not emotionally stable people. They have emotional instability. And when you have emotional instability, then that can cause the brain to go into places where they will say and do things that can be very, very bad. Yeah. So in some cases of narcissism, people will have to involve the police. There'll be restraining orders involved. There'll be protection orders involved because the narcissist won't give up. They will still want to exact vengeance because they will feel that they have been wounded and they can't tolerate that.
Do narcissists know they're narcissistic?
I'm not sure about that one. I'll try and answer that as best I can. They may know they have narcissistic traits, as in that they have an entitled sense of themselves and that they have traits of superiority, and so they might recognize that. But they wouldn't necessarily position that as, oh, well, I'm a narcissist. So that wouldn't necessarily be a space of reflection, Alex, where they'd get, oh, that's a problem. So they may recognize, oh, that's my personality, but they wouldn't infer that as a negative. In fact, they'd probably see it as a positive. So they would see those traits, those narcissistic traits, as, well, they're good things because that means that I am better than other people or I get further in life or whatever. So there might be a sense, yeah, I've got these personality traits, but not seeing it as, oh, that means I'm a narcissist and that means it's a problem. In fact, it can be the opposite. It can be seen as a huge advantage in life.
I suppose we've all got needs and wants, and sometimes that need and want can involve another person.
Yeah.
And I suppose narcissists, they're not born with a certificate that says they're a narcissist.
They're not born that way either, yeah.
At what point would a narcissist begin to become self-aware that they might indeed have a problem?
So we think at the moment it's kind of young adulthood where we start to see these things kind of happen. And you can sometimes see, say, in teenagers where they're the ones that like, have you ever seen the movie Mean Girls?
Yes, lots.
Yeah.
Got a young sister.
So, yeah. So Mean Girl, classic example, the Regina George character, she's a narcissist, and she's awful to the other girls. But in order, she has to be the most popular. She's got to take people down. But she also has to have people around her enabling her to stay in that top position. So we can kind of see that maybe in young adulthood. I often, when I'm with my teenage patients, I often say, like, Mean Girls has been revamped, of course. And we'll often say, like, are these mean girls? And go, oh God, yeah, they are mean girls. So they get it. They know what you're talking about because they recognize the behaviors. And so we can start to see it then. But then if it's the difficulty with personality traits, they can become very ingrained. So if that isn't kind of nipped in the bud in early on, Alex, then that can grow and a personality trait can become really entrenched in the life of that person. And then it becomes far more difficult then as an adult to undo all of that, because as we know in psychological research, personality traits can become very ingrained and they can be very hard to change.
So now we've had a crash course in narcissism. I need to...
I feel I've had a crash course in narcissism.
I need to voice some worries of my own. I'm on camera. I think I share some of the traits we've been talking about. I don't like being alone. I need praise to rid me of my RSD.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm a narcissist?
No.
How can I be sure?
No. So, a couple of things to consider. The fact that you're asking yourself if you're a narcissist is a very good sign you're not a narcissist. So that in and of itself is a very, very good sign that you're not. People who are not narcissistic self-reflect. They think about themselves. They think about other people. They also think about the impact that they have on other people. And so they're very much living in that community space. And for people with ADHD, they're very much in that space. We all need people, of course we do. And of course, people with ADHD, sometimes the interpersonal space can be a real challenge for them. So the people pleasing will come in, the overcompensating to deal with the RSD. So what you can see sometimes is, they might appear to be a little bit maybe distant, or they might kind of trail off in conversation. But that's not them trying to actually make you feel bad. There's no agenda here. It's the fact that they've zoned out, or they're not keeping up pace with the conversation, or they're overthinking, they're too much in their head. But there's not an agenda. And that's the difference. So, if you've got ADHD, like your agenda is not to try and manipulate the other person to try and get them to somehow make you feel good about yourself. That's not the case. Where somebody who is a narcissist, they've got that agenda, and you don't get that with ADHD. In fact, people with ADHD, if anything, they're too much in their head. Like after the conversation, instead then they go into over reflection. And I said that, I had this conversation with a patient, and then I said this and whatever, and the conversation was 6 months. I said, when did this happen? Oh, that was 6 months ago. Like, what? The other person has massively moved on. So you wouldn't get that with a narcissist. They'd be looking back, yeah, but they wouldn't be looking back thinking, oh, I'm concerned I upset that person. They'd be looking back with vengeance. Very different. Yeah.
Definitely describes me, the first half of what you said, like overthinking, desperately worried, I said the wrong thing, what people will think of me after I leave that social encounter. I genuinely can't think of a situation where I've ever gone, I need to plot revenge on...
But flip that again, like that shows you care about the impact you're having on other people. So you want people's interaction with you to be positive. You want them to leave you feeling better. So that in and of itself shows that you're conscious of the impact you have on other people in that sense. Whereas a narcissist, they will have a trail of destruction behind them in their life, and they won't look back and go, how did that get there?
There seems to be some traits that overlap, like narcissistic rage could quite easily be confused for RSD, manifesting itself as aggression. Love bombing could easily be mistaken for the hyperfocus of an ADHDer early in a relationship. How can I be sure that my traits are ADHD and not narcissism?
Okay. So I think let's break that down. So with ADHD, if we look at the diagnostics on ADHD, there's a problem with attention, there's a problem with sometimes hyperactivity, and we know that there's interpersonal challenges that a person with ADHD can have. But we also know within that too, it's massively linked to low self-esteem, it's linked to shame, it's linked to trying to cope with those very strong feelings. But also you have a brain where the executive functioning part of the brain is slower, and the person is going to be more prone to being emotionally impulsive or thinking with their feelings a bit quicker than they would with when it's not ADHD. So you have all that stuff going on, which kind of tells you kind of how that brain is working. But remembering that they're symptomatic of your neurodiversity. And so that's going to play itself out in your life. And recognizing, again, coming back to what we said earlier, that's management of ADHD in your life. But in managing ADHD, you're not trying to control other people to try and manage it. If anything, the person with ADHD, they're trying to control themselves. So they're constantly, working on themselves. It's not about, it's about trying to manage it with other people, but they're not trying to control or manipulate or coerce other people. If anything, the person with ADHD is having a massive job doing all that for themselves. So yeah, you can kind of say, oh, well, it's a hyper-focused love bombing. No, sometimes the person with ADHD, they're just trying to feel a bit more secure. So they might kind of get a bit more intense or talk a bit more, but they're not trying to manipulate you. I think, and in fact, my experience of working with people with ADHD, which is what I think is a massive gift in it, is they tend to be real sensitive souls. Like they're people that feel deeply and care deeply because of their own lived experience. So I don't meet people with ADHD that are trying to be awful to other people. And in fact, when they do say hit the rage button, they feel terrible. They're not proud of themselves. They feel terrible afterwards. You have to pick up all the pieces of, massively over apologizing and overcompensating because you feel rubbish about what just happened. Somebody with narcissism, they won't give that a second. You'll never get the apology from them. That won't happen. They'll burn the bridges. Whereas somebody with ADHD will be building multiple bridges because they think they've upset you.
Are there any other similarities someone with ADHD might have that are typical of a narcissist, but might not be narcissism?
Typical of a narcissist, but not be narcissism. Yeah, so things like, I suppose, be careful what I say here. The idea of like a sense of entitlement. The person feels, entitled to only good things happen to them, that they get success. And so that sense of, the good things only happen to me. So that can be kind of a sign of somebody maybe is more kind of low-key narcissist as opposed to kind of being the person who's got the nasty agenda. Or needing to be the centre of attention all the time because they don't want other people to get attention in the group. I love that, that song from Morrissey the Smiths, that we hate it when our friends become successful. Like that kind of person. So instead of them being like, oh, that's great, you got that promotion or whatever. Like if you're kind of like envying the person because they've done well, and you take that as a slight against you, that you can't be happy for them, then again, that can be a sign that maybe there's a bit of kind of low-key narcissism going on there. So it's a kind of toleration of failure, accepting other people's successes, but also like nobody wants to watch the same TV show all the time. That gets boring. And if we're out with people all the time and they're the center of attention all the time, we tune out. Now, nobody wants the same show all the time. Yeah. And that's when people can start to, well, I'm bored with this now. And the very thing you don't want to happen, where you don't want to lose people, you want people to adore you and to give you that validation, that will be the very thing that will happen, because people just won't want to hang around with somebody like that.
If someone has a ADHD partner and they are trying to figure out if it's ADHD or if there is something more sinister at play, what steps can they take to help them try and figure that out?
I'd ask one very pointed question. Would you go and see a psychologist about that? See what response you get. Because if somebody is narcissistic, they're not going. That's not happening. Whereas if somebody who has a sense of there might be a problem here, I might need to just get that checked out, then they won't feel threatened by that suggestion. They'll probably welcome and go, oh God, yeah, I think that's a great idea. So they won't see that as in any way threatening to their ego. But if somebody fears being exposed, or that the house of cards is wobbling, then that won't be seen as something positive. That will be seen as something threatening. So I think I'd ask that question very gently and just see what response you get. And if you get a bit of defense, that's okay. You know, sometimes we can be quite sensitive with these things. But I wouldn't back away just because you've got a defensive response. I'd go back in again and revisit the conversation. But if you're constantly getting defense and the person is shutting down, then I think you need to think about, okay, well, what's happening here? Because I'm not threatening the person and I'm not threatening to leave if they won't go to get some help. But if they're not open to discussion, then I think you need to think about, well, why won't they even communicate about this? Because it's just a conversation. And where's the threat in that?
What happens when two narcissists date each other?
That won't happen.
What if you're on a dating app and you only have a picture to go by and you meet up in a pub and you are both narcissists? How would that date go and what would stop it from progressing into a romantic relationship?
Two narcissists, that relationship can't work. I'll tell you why. Because they will both be in order for a narcissist to be successful in a relationship, they have to be able to manipulate the other person. The other person has to be open to manipulations and they can be manipulated. Whereas if you have two narcissists, you'll have two people who will not be manipulated. They need to be doing the manipulating. So that they won't get together because the narcissistic need won't be fulfilled with another narcissist.
Is there a cure for narcissism? And if not, what do you think might be a factor that perpetuates it?
There's no cure for it, sadly. I mean, it can be managed, but there's no known cure for NPD. There's loads of things that can perpetuate it. So we don't know the origins of it. As in, we kind of, just some research to say it's genetic. We don't know that. But what can perpetuate it is if the person is surrounded by people, has surrounded themselves by people who won't call them out. Interesting thing with a narcissist is people will stay in not narcissists themselves, but they'll see the value in staying in that transactional relationship with the narcissist. So if the narcissist gives them popularity, power, financial benefit, then it's an enabling relationship. So the person is enabling the narcissist because they're benefiting. So it's a transactional relationship. So as long as the relationship stays transactional, then everybody's getting what they want. So that being the case, and the narcissist can surround themselves with enabling people, which of course then means that the narcissism is only going to grow. It's not going to lessen.
When dating, how can someone spot a narcissist before it's too late?
It's a tricky one. I think the answer to that is you've really got to educate yourself on what narcissism is. And I often, say to my patients, like, we have a gut feeling for a reason. So your gut feeling, we're not quite sure what that is, but what we think it might be is our unconscious can speak to us. It can't go, hey, be careful, watch out there. It doesn't have the ability to do that, but it can kind of send us information in a more kind of sensory or physical way. So that kind of gut feeling, which is a kind of, what's this tell? I don't know what it is, but what's it telling me? So trust your gut. If something seems too good to be true, it is. If this person seems like they've walked off a movie set of your favorite rom-com, chances are that's exactly what's going on here. So I think you need to really educate yourself around narcissism and the fact that what somebody who's a narcissist behaves like. So if it's love bombing, if it's making you feel special very quickly, if the relationship is moving very fast, but you're kind of getting swept away with it, then if you say to somebody, let's slow it down. If they're genuinely interested in you, that won't be threatening. They're, oh yeah, okay, cool. Maybe we are going to be fast. So that won't be seen as any kind of sign that you're losing interest or that the relationship is in danger. But if the narcissist has an agenda, and the agenda is to love bomb you, to get you on board, they won't want that. They won't want to slow it down. They will spin that as, but I adore you, and I'm just showing you my feelings. So again, it becomes your problem. That, well, you're the person with the problem because you want to slow it down, whereas I'm just doing what I naturally do because I love you so much. So again, you need to be it's very subtle, and it won't be sinister in the early stages. But again, watch what's happening and listen to yourself and listen to other people. People around you, people you trust who have no agenda. Ask them what they think and listen to them. Because what the narcissist wants you to do is only listen to them. They want to turn up the dial on, tune into me and tune everybody else out.
How can someone tell the difference between being love bombed, which is manipulative and intentional,
yes,
versus being on the receiving end of genuine organic love?
Yeah. So love bombing, if you're being love bombed, it's very intense. But if you think the difference, say, between infatuation and love. So infatuation is just kind of very quick spike, which is all the feelings are super intense, but it's not sustainable. Like infatuation will spike very quickly, but then you lose interest just as quick. There's no longevity in that. And if somebody genuinely loves you, then that has longevity. That's somebody who sees a future with you. So slowing things down, again, if they see their future with you and if they are in love with you, then that love will create healthy boundaries, respect. It will want your opinion. It will want you to feel safe and valued in the relationship. So the person is wanting you to enjoy the relationship on your own terms. Whereas if you're being love bombed, that's not on your terms. It's on the terms of the narcissist. So if you try and change that in any way, then the narcissist will see that as a threat. And what you'll receive off the back of that is a negative response.
So if there's no cure, can you change a narcissist? And is it worth trying?
No, you can't change them because they can only change themselves. And so trying to change them won't go well for you. They won't appreciate that because remember, with a narcissist, they don't believe they have the problem. So everybody else has to change, but not them. So if you try and bring it to them, well, you need to change, then that's not going to happen. They're not going to change. So you really need to think about, can I be in a relationship with somebody who's not going to change and also who won't accept that their behavior or the way that they're dealing with other people is problematic. Yeah.
And can a narcissist be successful professionally?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. In fact, in some careers, it would be seen as a massive advantage. Think about a narcissist. It's all, like we said earlier, it's the number one relationship is with themselves. So they, with the lack of empathy and the lack of compassion, so they will completely screw you over and feel nothing about it, because screwing you over, okay, that might disadvantage you, but that's your problem. But as long as, again, the agenda, if it gives me an advantage or I benefit from that, then I've won. Then that's the desired outcome. So in business, then yeah, they'll steal your customers, they'll steal your deals, they'll go behind your back, they will do all kinds of things to get what they want, and some industries love that. That they're the people that they want making money for the business, because they are, air quote, very successful business people, because they'll do whatever it takes. They will throw you under the bus, and they won't care. And again, some businesses they like that ruthless kind of go-get attitude, and if that disadvantages somebody else or bends the rules a little bit, or it's even kind of dodgy, that's a well-told story. How many times I won't name, but how many times are certain financial institutions in the news because, oh, they broke the law? Well, who are the people breaking the law in the company?
So do you think the Forbes rich list might have a high concentration of narcissists within it?
Possibly, yes. Yeah. Because again, it kind of, if you want to be ultra successful, then you don't get, being nice to people isn't necessarily going to get you there. But if you're a tyrant and somebody who's known as being, it's interesting talking about, I was talking about culture earlier. Have you watched Succession?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So Succession is about with this family, and he's the main the father in it, and the children, their relationship. But he's a billionaire who runs this big media company, and he's awful to his kids, awful, and he's awful to the people around him, and they all want to stay in relationship with him because he has all the money, he has all the power, and they will sacrifice themselves to be in relationship with him, and he's just a horrible character. Yeah. That depicts that. Succession is kind of depicts narcissism, I think, really, really well. Yeah.
Fascinating. I'll put that on my watch list.
Yeah, it's very, what's the word? It should come with a trigger warning. Yeah. It's done so well. You're literally like, you're watching it thinking, I hate these people. They're just awful people. Very, very, very well done. Yeah.
So successful narcissists aside, with the lower rungs of narcissism and perhaps the majority of the narcissistic population that aren't particularly high-functioning CEOs, what can that look like? Or to put it another way, what does the everyday narcissist look like?
So they're the people that we have this expression in Ireland, and I'm not sure if they have it here as well. If that person was a bar of chocolate, they'd eat themselves. And it's that idea of they are so enamored with themselves. They praise themselves all the time. They want you to praise them. They want you to give them adoration. They might be the person that's boasting all the time and bigging themselves up. I went here on holiday and I did this and I know that person. So there's always that sense of grandiosity. And like we were saying earlier, if somebody else is doing well, or if they've done something that they haven't yet done or they wanted to do, then that's kind of seen as that brings a jealous reaction and one of envy. And also they can be the people too that if they're your friends, then they can be those one-directional friendships, which is it's all about them. So you're the person who basically they hang out with as long as it suits them, but they won't necessarily put themselves out for you. but they'll expect you to put yourself out for them all the time. So it's an uneven relationship. And again, it's a bit more transactional. So they can be, if they need you, then they will be all over you. And if they don't need you, or somebody else comes along that gives them more than you give them, you could be dumped quite easily. Yeah. They don't give you quality relationships or quality friendships. Yeah.
This has been truly fascinating, Dr. Mark. Just finally, social media, is it causing narcissism, or is it just the perfect tool for someone who already is a narcissist?
It's a perfect tool, yeah. It's funny, obviously I'm on social media, I suppose everybody else, and I'm always fascinated with what I see on social media around, come with me to get my hair cut, or come with me to buy a bag. And I'm like, what? And it's that kind of thing of like, look at my life, and look at me. And it is a breeding ground for people who have narcissistic traits. Absolutely it is, because it's an open forum to publicize your life and to make people envious of you and make people feel that you're better than them, which of course is why, on social media, you have people showing all of these kinds of things, like get ready with me. Like, what's that? Like, get ready with me? Like, that's a massive thing. What's that? That's not that's about them. It's all about them. So, and I'm not knocking at people. I know people watch that and probably don't come for me on this stuff, but I also think as well, like with social media, of course, unless you have the comments turned off, then people are going to comment on what they're seeing. And if the person is narcissistic, they will only need positive comments. But any negative comments, they get very sensitive, they get reactive, and they start defending themselves. And that's where you can see the fragility of the insecurity. Because if you're secure in yourself, then why do you need to defend yourself against that? If somebody doesn't like your outfit or your haircut, they think your bag looks ridiculous, then fine. That's their opinion. But if you've got that insecurity, then you can only have the praise. You can't have somebody critique you, even if it's coming from a valid place. And I always find this fascinating with social media. Like the person who is supposedly the adored person, like they can end up trolling you. Because they didn't like what you said. So again, it shows you everything. So I think it can be, for people who have narcissistic traits, absolutely, that could be a breeding ground for, sadly, just making that person even more entrenched in their narcissism. Yeah.
Maybe further.
It's like an old man saying that, hey? I'm not knocking this. Yeah.
Maybe further evidence that I am not a narcissist, because I signed to a management company to help me monetize this podcast, and I had a strategy meeting with them. And I remember saying that I would never ever do one of those, I think I said, silly get ready with me videos in the meeting.
Because I mean, if you can think, what would you get from that? Like what would that give you as an experience, as an actual moment in your life? What benefit does it serve you to have somebody get ready with you?
Well, I don't think my behind the scenes is interesting enough to warrant one of those styles of videos, if I'm honest. I generally, I have a shower in the morning, I put some clothes on, and I come do this. We have a closing tradition. We might have asked you last time. Maybe you've done some impulsive craziness in the last month and a half since you were last on. Your most impulsive thing?
You did ask me this the last time, and I couldn't come up with something, which is probably shows you how boring my life is. I was in Rome at the weekend, just gone, and I decided, because I run, and I decided I want to go running in Rome in 36-degree heat, which is probably not the smartest thing to do. Yeah. How
did that end up? How did that turn out?
It was not the nicest of experiences, I won't lie.
36 degrees, how far did you run?
I probably got about 4K or something. And I was huffing and puffing and thinking, this is probably not the smartest thing to be doing, yeah.
That sounds absolutely terrible.
Yeah, not wise. Yeah.
Truly, truly fascinating, Dr. Mark. Thank you again.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.